So another thing that comes up when we're dealing with the agencies is the constant changes they have with some logistics bases, which is the forms and locations. Could you talk about that issue, which is a major headache for not only just regular people but immigration lawyers because it's really unexpected?
Yeah, I would want to use the word nightmare, but it's probably not the right word. So what we've seen recently is that USA has been changing filing addresses like so much. Almost every week we've been getting these emails saying that the address for this form was changed. And for example, when we start working on the case, we have one address that we put on our cover letter, and but the time the case is done, it might be a couple of weeks, not so much time, right?
Yeah.
um, it can be a different address. They can change the PO box number, or just add this Z+4 to the address, and you never know if you don't put it there. For example, they might lost your filing, and it might not even make it to USCIS. You never know.
Yeah.
So same day when you file, when you are going to USPS to send your petition, your application, check the filing addresses on the USCIS website, to the specific form that you are using, that you are sending. And another thing that I want to mention, but I forgot about it.
No, I mean it's the edition dates and the fees
Yes,
as well.
yes. Thank you, John. Thank you, John. Yes. So edition dates on the forms. Again, same thing. We start working on the form, and by the time it's done, again, it can be like really very short period of time, because usually we have our cases out so much faster than, for example, people who do it themselves. Yeah, and it can be very short time, and the form can change. Usually, like, they give you some time, like some grace period within which you can still use the old form, right?
Yeah, I mean, right before Trump, they'll give you a couple months runway so you know it's coming. But during Trump's administration, overnight, we just wake up one morning and the forms would be different. Then massive amounts of people would have their cases returned because it was the wrong form. So it's very, they're kind of continuing that into the Biden administration so far, with certain forms being updated without much fanfare or notice.
Right, and it's very frustrating. It's time consuming, because you need to get everything um, from scratch if the form has changed. So you need to fill up the new form,
Yeah,
right? Probably evidence gonna stay the same, but still it's gonna take so much more time.
yeah.
And they're gonna send this package back to you. Sometimes it comes back and there's nothing there. So it's very stressful. It's very stressful. So to avoid this mistake, please make sure you check the edition date and the filing address, same day that you are sending your petition out to
Yeah,
US.
it may seem like basic information, but this is what immigration lawyers all do before they mail it. It's like one of the priorities, just as much as getting something signed, is just check it right before you go to the post office. They'll change it. And sometimes the fees may change without knowing as well. So it's really important to go on the website for the form. For example, I-130, there's a drop down menu where it says edition date. Make sure the edition date listed there matches what you have on the bottom left of the form that you have. And along with that, sometimes people, for some reason, print out their forms and the printer cuts off the bottom of the form. If the edition date listed there and the page number is not there, USCIS will return your case as being improper. You have to have the full page printed out. And I've seen this what happened with clients before, people that came to me with a case rejected, that the printer just didn't print the bottom for some reason, but that's not going to be acceptable. Sometimes it may get accepted, the case goes through, and they even cash the fee. And then later you get the case returned saying this is the improper version of the form of the edition. Now, sometimes when USCIS updates a form and a new edition comes out, it's the exact same form. So you'll be like, well, what's the difference? There is no difference. It's the exact same thing. They just updated the number on it, but that's what we have to deal with. So it doesn't make sense. Contact your congressperson if you're trying to make sense of it. But being in this practice for so many years and with all the experience we have, we're not trying to see if stuff makes sense anymore. It's just like, this is what we have to do for success. And it's the nitty gritty of it, is checking this stuff. Even passport photos we include in there. Write the person's name who's on it on the back, in case USCIS drops their passport photo on someone else's. They don't know who's who. At least they have the number, photo, name there, and maybe the alien number if the person has the alien number. There's a lot of different logistical and practical stuff we have to do. And even with regards to other things like tracking signature with postal codes and scanning. Could you talk about that, the importance of scanning your file before you send it in?
Yes, this is very, very, very important. I cannot tell you
Probably
how
the most
many
important thing
times,
we give
right?
any advice to anybody is this. Yeah.
Yes, please, please, whenever you send something, anything, it's pile of documents or it's just one document, doesn't matter. Please scan all your submission and have it somewhere saved. You will never know when you're gonna need it. If hopefully everything works out and everything is good, but if any issue pops up, uh, you will need it later. And what we do, for example, if client comes to us and we don't know, they don't have the copy of their file, we need to do a FOIA request. It's Freedom of Information Act request. It takes some time, like a couple months. It might take even longer than that.
Yeah.
And this delay can impact the submission too. So we'll not be able to submit the paperwork until we get the FOIA results.
And
Right.
sometimes you have to take a risk because if there's a deadline to submit it, and we have to get a waiver from the client, say, listen, we don't know what you submitted because you don't have the proof. We're just going based on what you're telling us. And because there's a deadline here where we have to move forward, it's ideally we don't want to go that path. We have another case right now, we just submitted FOIA. We're planning on filing this I-130. I said, listen, we knew your FOIA is going to take a couple months. Everything's going to get delayed now, but we need to confirm what you said in previous applications because we don't want to be inconsistent. We wanted to make sure you did things right because things could come back later with wrong information and then create massive problems for everybody involved in the case.
Yes, and even if you have the forms, for example, saved on your computer, right? There's always something last minute you can add something to the form, and
Yeah,
later you forget about it, right?
yeah.
And you need to have the exact same thing with your signature that you send to USCIS, exact copy. You can scan it, you can just make a copy of your file. It's always better to scan. Less trees to save
Yeah,
some
and
trees.
nowadays they have different technologies, different apps where you take a photo. I mean, it's going to take longer if you don't have a scanner. Not everyone's going to have a scanner. You could go to the different stores and just scan it there. But at the very least, take a photo of every page. Do something to keep a digital record of the file because if you need to go to a lawyer later or if you need to challenge USCIS, say that's not what I said. Here's my copy. Rarely it does kind of happen where government agents, change files and say no, that's not what we sent. Now it's hard to prove necessarily that your scan is that one, but it's a basic to start with. It's not something regular that happens where a government agent changes stuff, but rarely it has happened in the history of immigration. So it's really important to have that to have a step up. And when you're finally, even after you scan it and you're mailing it to USCIS, put the money in and get, for example, with USPS, which is what we use, the US Postal Service, express mail, so it's next day delivery, comes with tracking and signature. So you want USCIS to sign off on it to make sure they received it. And that way you have something to show that, we sent this file, they got it. A lot of lawyers use FedEx and UPS because they don't trust the US Postal Service. I've used them all and they've all failed me one time or another. So now I just stick with the government mailing service and so that's that. But some lawyers only do FedEx or UPS. I find it just becomes more expensive, but it doesn't add that much level of service from my experience. But everyone does it differently. Anything else you want to add to that, Anya?
I think that's it. We talked about everything in this regard.
Yeah, it's kind of a boring subject, but it's just so important because these are the main issues we deal with on a practical basis. Because not every case is super complex. There's always something, the issue that pops up in a certain case, but these are the basics that we have to be mindful of. And